Welcome to Not Just Ads, the show where B2B brands discover how creator-led content drives pipeline, builds trust, and grows long-term brand equity. Each episode, we speak with business leaders, founders, and creators who are defining their categories. I'm your host, Marcus Sherwin, and this is the Creator Economy for B2B. Hello and welcome to today's show of Not Just Ads. I'm joined by someone who's built demand generation engines from the ground up at some of Europe's fastest growing SaaS companies. Adam Holmgren is a demand gen leader, LinkedIn ad strategist and founder of Fibbler, a new platform built to help marketers run more effective campaigns with less guesswork. He scaled programs that connect brand to demand, drive measurable pipeline on channels like LinkedIn, and isn't afraid to challenge a conventional wisdom on metrics, attribution, and ad formats. In this episode, we're going to dive into design LinkedIn campaigns that actually move SQLs, why brand building and performance aren't mutually exclusive, and how Adam's B2B marketers can get ahead without wasting budget. Adam, welcome to the show. It's a pleasure to speak with you.
Yeah, great to be here, Marcus.
Great. I recently saw you mentioned something on a platform about brand and demand, and I think it was really interesting because you mentioned how you're seeing a big shift, and you've also had the first-hand experience in that shift in terms of really doubling down on brand. And you said that, yes, they should work together, but if you I know we're getting very tactical initially now, but maybe we could just walk back a little bit and you could tell me how you've seen that shift and how that's played into both your role as head of demand gen, but also as a founder of Fibbler as well, how you're seeing that play out and the business impact that you've seen it going all in on brand.
Yeah, but I mean, I think my perspective on it has changed a lot over the years. I'm coming from a very 10 years working in demand gen and now building my own startup, and the markets are getting so crowded, right? There's so many companies and products out there. Many do similar things, and it's also how we buy today is also very different compared to how it was 10 years ago in B2B, right? So I think that has changed a lot. I think people are not necessarily only buying a product because of the features and the capabilities that solve something for them. It's also about, they are buying it because they are joining a vision, they're joining kind of a movement, they are feeling good about the brand. So I think the one thing I realized early on now, building my own company and going up against a lot of companies that's very well funded, they have a lot of spend to put on various efforts. And when you don't have that, it's so important to create something people want to follow. And that's kind of what I live by now. I believe that if you are good at, explaining your narrative, explaining why you exist in the market, if there is a good product market fit there, people will come to you eventually. I think the issue starts when companies, when you start to obsess over driving leads and you obsess over driving these kind of top pipeline metrics. It doesn't necessarily play out well towards the bottom funnel, right? So we've been running Fibbler now for I think almost 15 months, and we haven't run anything outside of the brand awareness spectrum, I'd say. So we've only been running, because I'm only reporting to myself at this moment, right? So I don't have to prove top funnel pipeline to myself, but I so much believe in getting our brand out to as many people as possible with a clear narrative and what we are solving in the market, and then that will compound month over month over month. And LinkedIn ads and LinkedIn organic for us it's the best channel in the world to get your message out there, right, to the right people.
Yeah.
And I think when we restrict that and try to only send out things like, hey, book a demo here, hey, click this, that's when people are not going to feel engaged, right? They are not going to buy into that vision. So that's something I've learned over the last few years, is definitely if people want to buy a product like yours, they will do so at their time and when they have the need for it. It's your job to stay top of mind, to be present, to make sure that they remember who you are when it's time, right? Yeah.
No, it's really interesting. Do you find, obviously your role in Fibbler, you're accountable for yourself. So you've seen that, you create content, the pain points of the audience and your personas and so on. In marketing organization in role that you're in, your other role as head of demand gen, have you taken on a similar kind of strategy as well in terms of like focusing on brand? Or like, I know that you've been in that role for a while. So what I'd be interested to hear is if you've kind of moved in that direction, how do you look at like kind of even leading indicators to say like, look, we're on the right track here without having to try to justify, like maybe there's not as many leads, but actually the demos that we get are converting better, or there's the people are coming on, they're more educated and they're more moving through the cycle quicker, or like what do you look at really in those kind of situations to kind of see that what you're doing is actually having an impact?
Yeah, and I mean, it's a lot harder when you, in some way, at any company you work for, you have to kind of justify why you are putting money towards something, right?
Yeah.
And then it can be more or less dependent on the executives. But I think, as you are saying, I think the key here, if you want to move more in a brand direction, which I honestly think most companies should do these days, is to find these leading indicators where you can kind of show that you are having an impact. Let's say, I can take an example. At Rillion, the company I work for, we are a marketing team of 11, 12 or something like that right now, and I head up the demand gen team. We're running a lot of brand plays right now, I'd say. And an example of that is we're running a long kind of webinar series based on us interviewing CFOs in the market, talking about AI and so on, and not at all mentioning product, right? So it's very trying to establish ourselves as kind of thought leaders in the market. And the key here, the kind of leading metrics in that is we're looking at, okay, how are we able to grow this kind of webinar with participants, of course, month over month, and at the same time we get deals through the door where people are either referencing the webinar / podcast, or we can see that they've been part of the episodes months back. So I think there are ways to not necessarily, okay, this is the list of the webinar participants, send it to sales and they call everyone. It's more like, okay, we can see that these webinars had a touch point when they enter the pipeline, right? So I think we have to make it very clear to the executive team what kind of leading indicators we are looking at and what kind of correlation we believe they will have with bottom funnel metrics. Because in the end, the executive team, they are going to want to know, okay, are we going to hit the revenue metrics and the pipeline metrics this quarter or not? And I mean, we have to make educated guesses on that. And I think as long as we are very transparent in that, okay, these are the leading metrics we are focused on because we believe that they, in the long term, in the next quarter and in the next 6 months, they will affect the bottom funnel metrics as well. And then, it's of course some executive teams are more progressive than others and are more inclined to, I mean, if we look at the VC model and companies that are backed by VC and other investors, they often have a very, lead-centric model. They want to know these are the kind of MQLs, the deals that's coming in month over month. And I think that's a problem. I think it's hard for companies and brands to evolve after a while in that.
Yeah, definitely. I guess the big challenge is probably that initial transition phase, because most companies are reporting on a quarter-led basis. So if you have something whereby you're starting, whether it's a webinar, whether it's something that's top of funnel, that that probably down the line, that's not going to necessarily come to fruition depending on the length of the sales cycle. So it's difficult to be able to kind of justify like, okay, we're going to have a dip for the next 2 quarters when you have a financial team that need to report on that quarterly and so on. I think that's the challenge that a lot of companies that are very kind of strict kind of VC-backed face.
Yeah, and I think that's an important aspect there is maybe you don't want to, completely shift the perspective right away. You take small steps to kind of build that trust up internally. And after a while, you can start to release more brand plays. But most companies right now, whenever I audit a company, when I've started at one, most of them are running almost pure lead gen in many ways, right? They're trying to bring leads through the door. So if we can just launch one brand initiative and see the effect that can have in 6 months, and that, I think that's a great step for many companies.
Yeah, definitely. What do you look at like then in terms of like the webinar, how do you just put that into a sequence whereby you have media and then you promote it and you kind of take then the kind of the key what would I say, like the key points that are discussed in that might address pain points and so on? Is that kind of the approach that you have, or?
Yeah, I'd say a key metric for us is we of course we have various partners where we kind of drive people to the webinar. That's one thing,
Yep.
but what we really want to see is that people are watching the entire webinar as much as possible, so the topics are engaging our audience, because then I feel that we are hitting a mark here. We're looking at, we have around 30 minutes per episode or something like that. So we ideally want people to, or at least 80% of the people to watch it through or something like that. Then we are very happy. And I mean, typically we're talking about topics that's related to what we do and our products, right? But not talking about the product.
Sure.
So it's still, I think engagement in many ways is what I thrive on. I think that's a great brand metric. So can we engage our audience with what we're saying? I think it's going to trickle down in the end.
Yeah, definitely. And I think if you know the industry, you know the category that you're in, if you know what the challenges are, you obviously do when you're talking to customers. If you start asking those questions to people that share those, I think anybody that you speak to, the more senior up in the company, it's not about the product or the feature. It's about how companies are approaching the challenges that they face and what way they're looking at it, because a lot of the times the challenges can be quite similar in terms of what the industry has.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, this is the first time at the company really, and I work for, where I target CFOs, right? It's a new persona to me, and a very, very logical and straight to the point persona, which is also great learning. They just want you, tell me how it is. Don't a sales and marketing audience can typically be a bit more fluffy, right? In that sense.
Yeah. No, it's a different profile, I guess. I'd love to hear a little bit about Fibbler, and in terms of you built this. You've 15 months in the market. I read you've over 200 customers already. Fair play. That's a great achievement while juggling two roles and having a SaaS product with 200 customers. Well done and congrats. I'd like to hear a little bit more in terms of how the idea came about. And first of all, for the audience that's not aware of Fibbler, maybe you could just tell us a little bit about that as well.
Of course. And I mean, it's kind of what we've been talking about now. It came about in my previous company with my current CMO, actually. We were spending a lot of money on LinkedIn ads. We had a hard time to kind of justify the spend in terms of ROI, right? So I was thinking, we have to do something here. I was doing so much manual work trying to put together deals together with the companies I could see on LinkedIn and so on. So that's kind of what I built at that point for me to kind of justify it towards my CMO, who then justified it to the exec team, right? So basically what Fibbler is that we found a way to use the LinkedIn ads API data and just connect it to the CRM data, in other words. So kind of matching companies together to be able to see, okay, all of these companies that are not clicking our ads, that are not filling out forms, but are still becoming deals in the end, right? Because of brand, because they find us, because they Google for us or whatever. And we can see that we have had an impact. Not necessarily that, LinkedIn did it all, but it's a journey, and it's we can see trends and touch points. So that's what we've kind of created. And after that, I just launched it more as a fun side project, and then it just took off because I had the issue as a head of demand gen. More head of demand gen had issue, right? And sometimes what we found also with Fibbler is that we are entering a very competitive category. The attribution space is, of course, very, very hot. Everyone wants to prove what they are doing, but we kind of found a niche that no one else is really looking for. In the last few years, everyone has kind of moved up market, targeting these enterprise companies because they want to have higher ACVs and so on. But I wanted to target myself, the individual marketers that work at the SMB startups, the tech companies. And that has really been the success, because we've made like a self-serve platform in many ways. You can go in, you can pay for it monthly, and you can cancel whenever you don't need it anymore. So I think that was needed in the market as well.
Yeah, no, super interesting. So how does it work? It's basically like an API whereby you upload a list of companies to the platform, and then it'll basically see, okay, who's matching or who's not. and you can kind of see what the difference is then in terms of what the deals that the sales team come through.
Yeah, exactly. A company will connect their LinkedIn ads account and their CRM to our platform. And then they will be able to see, okay, these are, of course, all the companies that have seen and clicked on your ads. But then they will also be see, okay, how many of these deals that are within the CRM have we influenced before with our LinkedIn ads, more or less. So we can say that, okay, these are when the deals were created, but we can see that a long time before that, we had a lot of impressions or clicks with our ads, right? But they came from another source anyways. So that's kind of the big selling point, I'd say.
Yeah. Yeah, no, super interesting. And like what you said as well, I think for some of the solutions that you see, especially in B2B, because B2B is always kind of playing catch up in terms of attribution with the long sales cycle. It's a big challenge people face to proving the value. But having something that's specifically targeting the SMB audience, I think could be really useful, because a lot of the solutions can be very much enterprise focused. And there are a lot of B2B SMB companies that
Oh my God, there's so many companies, right? And I think we're going to see this a lot more of these niche products branching out and kind of helping other people like themselves, because, you know, everyone can't spend, I don't know, 10,000 or 100,000 on a platform, right? Sometimes they just want a smaller feature set.
Yeah, exactly. From this then as well, like, what's the hardest truth you've learned from kind of taking, say, a Fibbler from, let's say if you launched this maybe 8 or 9 years ago, you probably, I'll assume maybe you would have had a different approach in terms of it would have been potentially very demand gen led. What's the approach that you have now in terms of how you marketed it? You obviously saw that there was a gap in the market. You knew that there was a need for it. So you could see that from your job, but like in terms of how you actually marketed it and fulfilled that need, then could you walk us through a little bit how you went about that?
Yeah, no, it would have been very different a few years ago for sure. But and I think that's the beauty of it, right? You develop as a marketer, you develop as a person, and then I'm in a much better space now to build this, I think. And I honestly, one of the biggest learnings that has come to me is that as a marketeer, you're very dependent on the kind of product market fit that you have. And that is a realization for me. I mean, back in the days when I started out, I thought I could, you know, we can grow any company, any product, but it's just so much easier if your product fits well in the market, right? It's everything is gonna feel like a hurdle if it's not.
Yeah.
So that's the biggest realization. And I learned that early on in the Fibbler journey that, okay, we have something here. People are finding us without us doing anything, honestly. And when you're kind of spending your own money, you're also you're less inclined to spend it on things that aren't performing, so to say. But I think the biggest thing for me, I mean, I have been active on the LinkedIn platform for maybe 4 years and built up quite a solid network there of people that are similar to myself. That was, without that, I'm not even sure we would have taken off, right? Because it was I built trust with these people for so many years. And now I could say, okay, I've actually launched something here that I think you would enjoy. So it was much easier than reaching out to people that haven't heard about me. That was honestly the big thing in the beginning. And I would say that our first 50 customers were probably from my network in the beginning. And then, you know, when these 50 customers are happy with something, they will tell their customers, they will tell their friends. And I think that's key to the success, right? And then I think as that has progressed, we have started to amplify that by building the brand a lot more. So I have been utilizing a lot of these thought leader ads on LinkedIn as an example. They are the best thing ever. Or the way we've been able to utilize that is, I think it's an awesome add-on by LinkedIn. And in terms of the whole creator economy, right, it sits perfect with how that works right now. Typically people buy from people, right? And I'm able to kind of sponsor my face and my narrative and my thoughts to people that aren't in my network. So it's kind of a double-edged sword there, right? I can talk to the people in my network and grow that network, but I can also show it to people that are outside of that network. So I think that's really a new way I see in the B2B space right now, that companies are built more on people than necessarily on what they do and the brand from the start, which is really cool, I think.
Yeah, definitely. I also think as well that you're in a very unique position in terms of you saw what the challenge was. You saw that because it was something that you lived and breathed as well. So once you're able to see that and you're able to then, you're saying about creating a lot of content on the platform, you got your first 50 customers from people within your network. So obviously what you were talking about and the challenge that arose from that, where people resonated with that obviously as well. So that doesn't necessarily come from something like a company page just talking about the
No,
features and
exactly.
so on. I think it's more about the pain, really, that if people similar face that pain, they're going to definitely be interested then if there's a solution there. I'd love to hear a little bit more in terms of what are your plans for Fibbler over the next, say, 18, 24 months? Where do you see it going in the future?
Yeah, I mean, we'll see. No, but we have so much fun doing this. We are two people currently, right? I'm still doing it on the side, and I have a full-time job and so on. My co-founder is actually doing it full-time now, which is really cool. We can support him and his family
Great.
doing that. So I'm really thankful of that. But I really see it as we are going to continue down this SMB path. I think that's where we have, there's so many SMB companies that need just a little bit of help getting some insights.
Yeah.
I definitely see us in the future maybe adding more channels. We have been very LinkedIn ads focused, which is because that's my passion, that's my bread and butter, right? But I of course see companies are using other channels as well, and to kind of see how those correlate together, I think is also really exciting. Typically what you see, right, when I look at it manually, is you run all of these ads on LinkedIn, you do organic on LinkedIn, but maybe in the end, towards the bottom funnel, they might Google your brand, right, and end up in the funnel. So to see how that works together, I think is something we definitely want to put in as well.
Yeah, very interesting. You touched on something there as well. I'd like to get more of your thoughts on around the creator economy in B2B. We're seeing founders, employees become kind of the face of B2B brands. From your demand gen lens, then, how would you see like kind of measuring the commercial impact of these creators versus traditional ads? Because we've talked to a number of people on the show in the creator space, and we're seeing that this is having an explosion of growth now, because it's obvious people trust people more than they trust like a logo or a brand per se. But I'd like to hear from your perspective, excuse me, how you see this in terms of how you could measure the kind of the commercial impact on say traditional ads versus working with creators.
Yeah, and I mean, it is starting to get tricky when you are utilizing a lot of people to grow your brand, right, to measure it. But I have been now, of course, doing it using my own personal brand for Fibbler, but I've also been trying to do the same for various companies I've worked for. And one thing I've realized that if you want it to be successful in terms of growing through people, it's very important that they are your persona as well. Typically, you see a lot of companies, they try to get their CEO or something like that in front of their buyers, but it's very tricky and get that trust if they are and if they don't already have a trust built up within the audience. So I think that's also critical here. You can't just take your entire exec team and say that, okay, now we want you to be creators, talk about how great our product is and so on. They also, if we're selling to CFOs, I ideally want my CFO to be the person that we can utilize in that sense.
But that makes sense.
Yeah, and in terms of measurement, I mean, I think something like thought leader ads has made it a lot easier. We're able to organically, is really tricky to see the impact. You can see engagement metrics and so on, but it's really tricky to see the impact on the revenue side and on the CRM side, of course. But when we can also utilize that in ads, we can get a whole new granularity in terms of tying that to companies in our pipeline. But I also think it's just sometimes we need to be able to not measure things as well. And I think that's important in this creator economy. I mean, if we are getting the right people that talk about our products, genuinely, and they do that, there's a lot of people talking about Fibbler without, we're not paying anyone, and they just do it out of because they love the product. That's the most powerful thing, I believe. It's not that you have to pay someone to be an influencer for your brand. It's more that, you make it easy for people to talk about it, I think. And, you highlight them when they do so, because everyone wants to have that initial spark. But one thing I'd say about measuring, though, is that something that is powerful, I think, is ask when people are coming inbound, asking them in a sales call or in a form, like, how did you hear about us actually? It's very simple, but also pretty powerful. And if they then tell you, okay, they heard us from this creator over here, that's very good intel for how they are actually performing, right?
Yeah, definitely. I think as well with the creator economy, like it's like what you say, if you try to measure everything and tie everything to the same thing, it's difficult to be able to do that, especially at something that's evolving so fast as well.
Yeah.
And it kind of goes back to the thing of before they would say, like, 50% of my marketing budget is wasted. The problem is I don't know which 50%. Even with a lot of attribution models and stuff, there's a number of different things that it doesn't pick up that does have an impact in terms of the referral, the people, advocates, and so on. They're not always picked up, but they just have just a strong impact as some other channels that are as well.
Exactly. But something I'd say on this, at least, that you can and probably should measure, that I think companies are way too bad at measuring. That's your brand metrics, right?
Yeah.
And one simple brand metric is looking at, branded search. How is that? That's of course a long-term metric, but still, if you run a lot of creator plays and influencer plays in that sense, that is most likely going to pick up over time. And if your brand is growing, you can't really necessarily say that that's the only thing that made it happen. But I think as you start your brand and creator activities, if you can see that your brand is trending in the right direction, especially compared to your competitors, right, then you're really in a good spot, I'd say.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it's a long-term play as well. It's not something like that. You just get somebody with a load of followers and they write a post and you hope that it's going to just get you having this spike in conversions down the line. It doesn't work like that. I think it's more of a long-term play.
Yeah, and I mean, I've even seen people being recruited these days because of their networks, right? So I think it's gaining in popularity as well, right? To have a network and to have but I think it's so important also to, if you are working as a creator and helping different brands and so on, to do it very genuinely, right? If you're promoting a product, you have to have used and liked the product. I mean, and sometimes that people misses out on that. You see the same creators talking about every product, right? And then it kind of, the authenticity goes away a bit for me.
100%. Yeah, it's definitely, and that rings right true. If you haven't used a product, or you're not that knowledgeable about it, or you're not really a true advocate, or like you're not, that's going to ring true. And I think it does two things. It reduces the affinity for the brand, but also for the creator as well. It's eroded over time. So I think good creators, though, really are conscious of that it's a long-term play. If you're doing something there's not an alignment there, that both are going to suffer over time.
Exactly. I agree completely. And I mean, short-term, it can have a positive impact, but as you say, long-term, these things, they can definitely damage your brand. And I mean,
I'd love to hear a little bit in terms of predictions for the future. B2B, in the B2B space, which is very broad, and it's a very broad question, I know, but maybe we can, like, from what you see in terms of the marketing play in B2B, we're obviously seeing it's a much more focus now, or a trend we're seeing across business segments about people focusing more on the brand play. What other trends are you seeing, and how do you think things will play out in the next, say, 1 to 2 years?
Yeah, I think it's going to be a very interesting time, right? The whole AI pickup in everything from vibe coding to everything like that is crazy. And I think we're gonna see an influx of products on the market for sure, but I think very few will survive in the end. So I think we're gonna see a lot coming in, but very few actually making it past 1 year, 2 years, 3 years. So I think that's going to be, but I think it's going to be healthy. I mean, competition is going to be great because it's going to push the products to be the best that they can be. So I think that is good for most companies. And I think we are in very interesting times. I think as a marketeer, and what I see with other marketeers, my peers, they are becoming so advanced in how they can do things on their own, and they want to do things on their own. I think during the last 10 years, building product in the B2B has been a lot about hand-holding and been a lot about telling you what to do. Now, I think we are going to see so many of these niche tools, small tools. They give you possibility to use data, and then you are the ones executing. So I think that is something that is changing dramatically. Like people are operating on a whole new level, I'd say, and not necessarily trusting themselves a lot more, I'd say, learning new stuff and, being able to do stuff on their own. So I think we are going from more people operationally and less people on the strategy level in a lot of companies, for sure, because you kind of have to at this point.
Yeah, especially now. Like what you mentioned about enabling, I think with the tools that are there, you can get stuff to market so much faster, so you can get feedback, and those feedback loops can be a lot quicker than they were 5 or 10 years ago as well. So it's a really interesting space to be in at the moment. Adam, it was a pleasure to talk with you. I really enjoyed this. Where can people find you? Where do you, I guess on LinkedIn, no?
Yeah, exactly. I try to post there as much as I can, so definitely reach out on LinkedIn.
Great, and Fibbler as well. We will leave the details as well in the show notes for anyone that wants to check out Fibbler as well. I know you post a lot about it on LinkedIn as well, so I guess they will find out there as well. Adam, thanks again. It was a pleasure to speak with you.
Thanks so much, Marcus.